I'm receiving a report from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding East Baton Rouge flood resist reduction project intended to reduce flooding along the 5 sub-basins throughout the parish, including Jones Creek, Ward Creek, Bayou Fountain, Blackwater Bayou, and Beaver Bayou, by Councilmember Lori Adams. Fred.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate it, and we're here tonight to ask the Corps to give a presentation and an update on where we stand on our 5 tributaries project. There's been some questions and concerns actually expressed about where we are, and Mayor has been very adamant about trying to get the Colonel to come. Colonel could not make it tonight. They'll indicate why, but we have 2 of his top assistants who can also certainly answer any of the questions I believe that will be may be asked. They will be doing a presentation in reference to that, and you'll also notice that there's an item on the agenda that Jones Creek, part of the clearing and grubbing contract, will be asking for council's commitment to move forward with that project, because we did get some bids and awards on that. So we are moving in the right direction. I know sometimes it takes a little longer than people like to see, and I do understand that. But I think today, we can get the Corps to give a little bit of information, answer some of the questions. And I know this, I want to make sure the council will understand. We're trying to be very much upfront, let everybody know what's happening, what's taking place, and that's the reason that we put the item on the agenda for the bid, because realistically, the agreement that we signed, we don't really need to do that. But I think it's imperative that we be very upfront, let people know exactly what's taking place, what's it costing, so everybody knows where those issues are. So with that, I know Ms. Laura may want to say something, but I'll go ahead and ask the Corps to come on up and get ready for the presentation.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, it certainly is my pleasure to be here this afternoon. My name is Mark Wingate. I'm the senior civilian at the Corps of Engineers out of the New Orleans District. Certainly send my regrets on behalf of Colonel Stephen Murphy. He is our district commander. He very much wanted to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he did have some personal matters to take care of. I will certainly share with you this project is extremely important to him. He is tracking that I am here tonight, and I will certainly be back briefing him on any comments or questions that you may have. With me tonight, I do have Mr. Nick Sims, who I'm going to try to go about 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask Mr. Nick Sims to come on up and actually make about a 5 to 10 minute presentation on this. With me also, I have Mr. David Bradley. I have Captain Westlake as well as Lieutenant DeRay with us tonight. What do I want to do this afternoon? I really want to give you just a quick update, and I want to give you the bottom line up front, just as a summary, and then Nick will come up and actually walk you through a little bit more. Of course, this is a very important project. It's a flood risk management project. Some may consider it a drainage project, but it's a very large project at $255 million. And before I want to give you a detailed update on this presentation, this is a major investment. It's what we would call a civil works project. Civil works projects are complex. They take a team effort to implement. While I'm speaking on behalf of the Corps of Engineers, the Corps of Engineers is not doing this by ourselves. It truly is a team effort, a team sport. And that team sport extends all the way from the congressional delegation, securing the funds, certainly to the local level, to the state level. We certainly are blessed to be working with a great administration with Mayor Broome and Fred Rayford, and certainly Mayor Barrow of the city of Central. But just back to the team sport. Certainly those players, you would imagine they'd be involved. But it's also down to the homeowner who lives along these channels that we need access to their property in many cases. It comes down to working with a willing utility company to relocate lines or to make sure that we understand where their utilities are. So this is a major effort, a major collaboration effort to pull this $255 million project off. But we are certainly blessed to have these resources in the city parish of Baton Rouge. Of course, this was made possible by the execution of a project agreement between the Corps of Engineers and the city parish of Baton Rouge in November of 2019. So the agreement was put in place about 2 years ago to move this project forward. And that agreement is very important because it talks about the responsibilities of the major players. That's the city parish, and that's the Corps of Engineers. So I just wanted to go over a few of the key responsibilities of the city parish. They are a non-federal sponsor. They're responsible for providing 25% of the cash on this project. That's about $65 million that the city parish has to come up with for this particular project. When the Corps of Engineers finishes this project, we will turn that project over, and it is the responsibility of the city parish to operate and maintain the project at 100% local cost share. And the third thing that is very important, and it's often the first thing out of the gates to build these projects, is the city parish is responsible for providing all the right-of-way to provide us all the land. It'd be very much like if you had the money to build the home, but you need a lot to build the home on, and it takes time to get that land. As I mentioned, team sport, working with the landowners, working with utility companies, getting lines relocated, et cetera. What is the role of the Corps? The Corps of Engineers' role is to pay 75% of this project. That's about $190 million, certainly to design the project and to construct the project, and along the way, of course, achieve all the environmental compliance. So with all that said, what have we done in the last 24 months since executing this partnering agreement back in November 29? Well, the first thing I'd like to share with you is this was no easy task just to get this agreement in place. Yes, the federal government announced in 2018 that $255 million is coming to the table. Prior to that point, no one went to city parish and said, start budgeting for this project. So we first approached the administration and said, great opportunity. You've got to come up with $65 million. That was a lot of work on the administration to try to find $65 million. Also, they started coordinating the terms of the agreement. That was quite a bit of effort. And plus, city parish had invested some money in this program prior to the agreement, and they rightfully wanted credit for that. So we had to work through those terms. We were able to accomplish all of that together prior to signing the agreement. So again, what have we done since signing the agreement 2 years ago? Well, think about this. This plan that is authorized for this flood risk management project was actually developed in the 90s. So a lot of things have changed since the 90s. So when these monies first came to us, we know that East Baton Rouge, the population growth along these canals and coulees has changed dramatically. So we essentially had to embark upon a master drainage plan for these 5 major channels. One, to make sure it would be effective for Baton Rouge, but just as importantly, that we would not negatively impact our neighbors downstream. So we had to coordinate closely with Livingston, Ascension, and Iberville, and East Baton Rouge to make sure we could have a plan that everyone could support. And I'll tell you today, right now, I have no known opposition based upon that based on the engineering analysis that we've done. So certainly that is a check mark. Along the way, of course, this plan that was developed in the 90s, there weren't many homeowners along these channels. When we started looking at it now and started doing the counts, we were talking about 1,000 homeowners that might need to be impacted. So we wanted to re-engineer the plan, reduce it so that it would actually be implementable by the parish in terms of acquiring real estate. So that took some time, and of course we wanted to reduce those impacts so the environmental compliance would not be as extensive. We've re-engineered the plan, and we think we've got a very good plan moving forward that can, in fact, be implemented, and again, with no known opposition. So I looked at as check 2. So now that we've got the plan in place, East Baton Rouge is really able to, based on that plan, start moving out and getting the real estate rights, identifying utilities, working with those utility companies to make sure that we can go in and build this plan. Of course, at that point, I now know the plan. I can really advance my engineering. I can advance my environmental work. So again, keep in mind this plan was from the 90s, so we could not immediately just go to construction. We had to make sure that we could put a plan in place that would be helpful to Baton Rouge, efficient to Baton Rouge, but also not harm our neighbors downstream. If we could just go to the next slide, please. And Nick, again, is going to go through this presentation, but that kind of lays out the channels that we're talking about across East Baton Rouge, and I'm going to let Nick hit that. But bottom line is, so where are we right now? Where are we right now with respect to actually constructing this project? So if you look at that map and you kind of separate it in half, you've got lower what I call 2.5 channels, and in the upper portion, you have the other half of the project. We're in a position right now to award the lower half of this project in about the next 3 months, to award for construction, and we'll be complete with construction in about 12 months from today on the lower half of this particular project. In terms of the upper half, you can see some red colors in that map, and you can see some yellow colors. That's where the channels have to get a little bit wider. We'll have to be working with a lot of landowners and so forth in those particular areas. The environmental compliance on that's a little bit more complex. So I'm actually embarking on a pretty major environmental document called an environmental impact statement. That is underway. That will go out to public comment later this year around the September timeframe. And pending no significant comments as a result of that public review, we'll be in a position to start awarding contracts in the upper reaches at the beginning of 2023. Again, assuming that we were able to secure at the local level all the real estate and utilities. So that's kind of the summary of where we are. We've come a long way, in my opinion, since signing this agreement to re-engineer this plan, to get it efficient for Baton Rouge, make sure no negative impacts downstream, get through all the environmental compliance documents, get the design going, working with the city parish, getting the real estate, and I think we're in a position now that we can actually start seeing some dirt turning here pretty soon. Nick, if you wouldn't mind just coming and giving a little bit more detail.
If I may, and I don't know which one, can you tell me the lower half you was explaining, or he can?
Yep, I'll touch on that. All right, thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, council. As Mark mentioned, my name is Nick Sims. Mark kind of gave you a little background and overview of the project. I'm going to touch on more of the specifics of the individual streams and the upcoming work that we have. So you see the map that we have here. This overall project will have channel improvements to 5 streams in East Baton Rouge Parish. Starting from the north, you see the 2 streams in Central, that's Beaver and Blackwater Bayou, and then the lower 3 streams there, Lower Jones Creek, Ward Creek, and Bayou Fountain. So this project will have channel improvements to over 50 miles of streams. The types of improvements will vary by stream and location, but looking at the colors you see there, the red, that's channel enlargement, the yellow is concrete riprap, and the green is clearing and snagging. So there, the channel enlargement reaches, that's some work that's going to be done in the 2 streams, Blackwater Bayou and Beaver Bayou. The concrete riprap there on the Upper Jones Creek portion, and then the rest of the work there is the clearing and snagging that we're looking at. So that kind of just gives you an overview and lets you orient on what the work is and where it's located. We go to the next slide, please. So now let's kind of dig down into the individual streams and where we stand with each of them. So these near-term channel improvements, this is the work that Mark referred to as the lower 2.5 streams. This is the clearing and snagging channel improvements that we'll see on Lower Jones Creek, Ward Creek, and Bayou Fountain. Construction is imminent on all 3 of these streams. We've completed the design, we've got all the environmental approvals, all utility coordination has been completed, and the majority of the real estate has been acquired. So going into each individual stream, first you got Lower Jones Creek, which is there in that blue box. That's about 3.3 miles of clearing and snagging, starting from the Amite River upstream to O'Neill Lane. This project right here, we will have awarded here in the next week or 2. We've completed everything. We actually opened bids, as Fred mentioned, on this project a few weeks back. So we will be starting construction on that one very soon. Next stream we have is Bayou Fountain. That's about 4.6 miles of improvements, starting from Bayou Manchac upstream to Burbank Drive. For this one, we're looking at a contract advertisement in February. We've got all the real estate, all the utilities identified for this one also, and we're going through the final reviews on the design. So advertisement on this project again in the next few weeks. The final stream in this third group, as we're calling it, is Ward Creek. For this one again, 3.3 miles of improvements from Southern Hills Avenue upstream to PQ Lane. For this one, all design is complete, and we are working with the city parish to get the construction authorization for entry, looking to advertise this contract around the April timeframe. So again, for these 3 streams, by spring of 2022, you will see actual construction, boots on the ground, dirt being turned for these 3 streams. Now, one thing that I want to point out is, while this is just a portion of the work, there will be great benefit once this work is under construction. Once this is implemented, we're looking at anywhere from 6 inches to 4 feet of stage reductions in some of these areas. So that is a tremendous benefit for these areas. So we're going to see a lot of benefit to the residents once these are constructed. Overall, as Mark said, we're looking at about a 9 to 12 month construction duration on these. And again, that's when those benefits will start accruing. So that's the near term. If we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so next I'll touch on the remaining channel improvements. This is the upper 2.5, as Mark mentioned. Now, these streams have more complex improvements. We are combining that clearing and snagging work that was done on the lower reaches with channel enlargement and that concrete riprap. With the more robust improvements, again, we're looking at stage lowerings around the 4-foot range on these particular streams too. So again, tremendous benefit to the residents living in this area. But as Mark mentioned, with those more complex solutions, we do have to do a little more work. These are subject to the completion of an environmental impact statement. That is because to do this work, we've got to get outside the existing channel banks, which I'll touch on in a second. But that increases the environmental impacts. It also increases the real estate and utility impacts. So again, as Mark mentioned, these are taking a little more time. But to go through each of these individual streams, first we'll look at Upper Jones Creek. That's in the blue box. That's Upper Jones Creek and its tributaries, Lively Bayou and Wiener Creek. Here in the yellow, as you can see, I think it's blocked by our screen, but the yellow is where the concrete riprap will be, and then you've got the additional clearing and snagging north of those bayous. And then moving into the streams in the city of Central, in the yellow box, you've got Blackwater Bayou and its main tributary, a little over 14.5 miles of improvements there. That's including channel improvement or channel enlargement, which you see there in the red, and then additional clearing and snagging, and that's going from the Comeet River to Greenwell Springs Road up to McCullough Road. And then the final stream that we're looking at here is Beaver Bayou, again, 8 miles, similar improvements, channel enlargement, and clearing and snagging. And that'll go from Frenchtown Road to Hubbs Road. So what are some of the challenges and remaining activities that we have to get through in order to get to construction, to initiate and complete construction on these 3 streams? Well, the first one, I've mentioned it, Mark has mentioned it, we've got the environmental compliance. Unlike the lower 3 streams, we cannot do this work from within the channel. We have to get outside of the banks due to the conditions. We are enlarging some of these channels, so that is increasing the environmental impact. And because of that, we've got to do what's known as an environmental impact statement. This is not a short document. There is a lot of coordination and a lot of work that has to be done to document these impacts. We've got to go through and do extensive field surveys to document cultural surveys and HTRW requirements. We've got to determine mitigation strategies for impacted habitat, coordination with other state and federal agencies on environmental impacts, and also engagement with the public. So again, unfortunately, that is not a short process, but it is underway, and we're looking to have that document go out for public review by the end of the year, as Mark mentioned, around the September-October timeframe. So additional challenges and remaining activities, again, related to the type of work and going outside of the channel with our construction. You've got the real estate acquisition and the utility coordination. Again, it's just more robust because we are impacting a larger area. And then finally, we've got the construction sequencing. As Mark touched on, one thing we have to be sure of is that we are not inducing impacts to the surrounding areas of these streams. So each of these has to be constructed from downstream up, and that is taken into account for the plan. So with all that said, though, the team at the Corps and the Parish and the City of Central, we are working together and moving forward with these 3 streams, and we're looking at starting construction on these in early 2023. So that concludes the brief I have, but in summary, again, by spring of 2022, you will see boots on the ground construction on those lower 3 streams. And once those are constructed, again, you're looking at around 4 feet of stage lowering, so tremendous benefit to the communities. And then with the higher streams, the upper streams that we're looking at, again, a little more work, a little more robust improvements, but we'll be looking at starting construction on those in early 2023. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to go ahead and have a public hearing before we go to council members. Is anyone here to speak on item 149? Anyone here? Brian Campbell. Is here to speak on item 149. Would you, Brian, you don't want to speak? Okay. Anyone else here wishing to speak? We go to council members. Councilmember Adams.
First of all, I want to thank you both for coming. I know it wasn't easy for y'all to be here tonight, but I really, really appreciate it. Post the flood in May, residents have been asking about this project, and I think the Army Corps of Engineers voice is critical at this time. We all know Fred, and we hear Fred talking about a lot of different projects, and so for this right here, your voice is singular and very, very helpful. One of my concerns at the moment is funding. I don't know what's happening at your houses, but everything is getting more expensive in my home. And so my concern now is this $255 million and $65 million, is it going to be enough to get this project done, these projects done?
Thank you, Councilwoman. That is a great question. And back to earlier, I mentioned we had to re-engineer. We needed to relook at this plan because it was developed nearly 25 years ago. That was one of the things we also had to look at, was as we redesigned it to ensure that we could, in fact, implement this at the $255 million. I will tell you, I can't give exact numbers, but some of the early bids that we've already received are very favorable. So we right now, confidence is high. We've got a number of projects. We know Comey is to the north, okay? And we saw what the recent bills have done, is added some extra monies into those projects. But we feel very comfortable right now at our cost.
Okay, that's good news. Another question. Residents who want to keep up with these projects and where we are from week to week, month to month, where should they be tuning in, logging on to? Should they be going for the most up-to-date information?
Yes, ma'am. So the best place would be on our core website, and I can send you that link, and you can get it out to everybody. That's where you're going to find the most information. But look, we are happy to have monthly meetings, bi-monthly meetings, whatever you'd like. As we move forward with this environmental impact statement, there will be public meetings with that. But anytime you'd like to have a meeting or an update, we can meet, small group, as large group, whatever you'd like. But just for day-to-day stuff, the core website would be the best place to go, and I'll send you that link.
Okay, terrific.
Well, I want to mention, I know there's been a lot of concerns and questions asked about how can I follow up on that. Well, I've also have chatted with the Corps. We're going to look at trying to get that set up with our stormwater master plan and have that on the link so they can see what projects are doing. Because when we get the plan underway, that's where all our construction projects are going to be looked at from. So we're going to see about getting this set up for the link so people can, be a little easier to follow up on it, on the projects and the statuses.
That would be terrific, since we already have people going to that location. Okay, so you mentioned, dirt turning spring of 2022, which has gotten me very happy. Is there anything on the horizon that could be an impediment to that? Is there anything with real estate acquisition? Is there any concerns that you have right now that could be an impediment to us seeing dirt turn? Or this project's be moving in just a couple months?
So as I mentioned, for the first two streams, Lower Jones Creek and Bayou Fountain, though everything has been acquired, design done, just finalizing design on one little piece, no issue on those. Ward Creek, as I mentioned, we are still working with the parish to get that construction authorization for entry. That has taken more time than we anticipated, but we are working together on that, and I do not see that being a delay. But it is contingent on receiving all of the real estate to get that contract awarded and going under construction.
So there's some that has not been worked out at this point?
There is one area, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, but you're optimistic?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I think that's all I have.
All right, Councilmember Moe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all's presentation on all of this. Of course, my district is a lot of the upper area, but I'm going to ask a real quick question. Follow up on Councilwoman Adams. The biggest problem I see, and it's exactly what we ran into with the Comey River Diversion Canal, and it's exactly what drove up the price, and it's exactly what delayed and so on and so forth, is right-of-way acquisition. And that is the biggest question. And I know, she asked particularly, and you gave the best answer that you could, but what we're saying is we have not finished all the right-of-way, and I'm just talking about the lower right now. We have not completed the right-of-way acquisition or access that we need to move this project forward as far as moving it to completion. I think it's wonderful y'all going to start in the next month or two, and so on. But there is that potential that you're going to have to stop. You run into somewhere that you don't have the right of way, you don't have the acquisition that you need, it comes to a screeching halt. And I think we need to find some more definitive answers as far as what we're either going to do about that. Do we just work around that piece of property and continue forward? Or is it going to bring the whole thing to a screeching halt?
Let me take a first swing at that again, and I'll repeat some of the comments. No one wants a big brother federal government coming into the local level and buying up people's land. So that is essentially why it's the responsibility of the sponsor. So I know that Fred and his team are working very hard to acquire those rights. And that's why I kind of talked about it's a team sport. So those local homeowners and private landowners and utility owners, they also have to recognize this is for the bigger picture. This is for the better good. So we need their help. We need their assistance to get the land. That is not unique to this particular project. It's every civil works investment project. It's any project that you build in a public environment where you have to acquire the land. Now, with all that said, if the city, parish, or the sponsor is unable to get a piece of property as engineers, we're going to do everything we can to work around that, but that's more time and money, because now I have to go back to the drawing board and redesign, and it may not be possible. It may not be possible. Okay, when we're talking staging areas, if a non-federal sponsor can't quite get this area, maybe we can use another staging area, but we are looking hard on that sponsor, to acquire the land. But again, it is a team effort that we're going to be working with Fred and others to be as flexible as we can with the design to be able to obtain those lands where you might have willing owners and willing utility companies to meet our schedule. They're not on our schedules. And that's, again, where it comes to the team sport piece. Fred, I don't know if you've got a comment.
Yeah, certainly, because the fact the city is responsible for the acquisition part, either from a total acquisition or rental or property. We work very closely with the Corps. We have the maps that we have early on. We have the surveys that are done out there, and we present the surveys and we provide the appraisers to go out and give the fair market value for those tracts. In most cases, we don't have problems. Sometimes we do, and when we start, right now, currently, I don't really have too much of an issue because it's mostly temporary construction servitude on the lower phase. But when we get up into people's property and have to do acquisition, that gets to be a little more of a concern from the homeowner and what the impact is, and we will have to look at those issues. It'll take a little longer than normal. By our standards, and you asked that question, I think, at the last council meeting when we presented a bunch of the expropriation processes that we had to deal with. I don't like to expropriate property. That is not the intent. But in reality, when we make the offers and we try to make counter offers and it's still a no, then we will have to take the steps to move forward for what I would say is the better good of the community to get these projects underway. I think we do a good job of that. This is a little unique situation, the one on Wards Creek, but that's going to get resolved here very soon. But I don't believe that it will be a problem working with the owners. My concern is being sure that we have the funding in place where we can do the acquisitions.
Okay, so for all of these lower halves, we've already started the process of the land acquisition or whatever that we need. We're not still in the determining phase. Are we still in the determining phase of what land we need?
No,
or are we in the process of acquiring this land that we need?
We're in the process of acquiring everything we need on the lower phase that Mr. Sims just made reference to. Jones Creek, the Bayou Fountain, and also the Wards Creek, the bottom portions. Yes, sir. We have that. We got one property owner we're still dealing with, and we're going to resolve that issue here very soon.
Okay, great. I wish when we had open discussion like this, we could go back and forth, but I only have 2 5-minute times. I'm going to go ahead and roll into my next 5, if that's okay.
Knock yourself out, sir.
I'm going to jump to the upper Jones Creek, Blackwater, Beaver, Bayou. You mentioned 2023 getting started with that. And I only have 5 minutes here, so let's just stick to the details. Environmental impact study. Where the frogs are, what trees need to be saved, all this kind of stuff, and everything else that we have to go through with all this. Where are we at on that environmental impact study? Has it started? Is it almost completed? 80, 60, 20%? Where are we at?
Yes, sir. As I was mentioning earlier, typically an EIS, environmental impact statement, takes about 24 months. We are ready to go to public review around September of this year.
What does public review mean as far as where it's at?
So what that means is you're getting close to the end. Because if I can go out to public review in September, I send that document out to the public, I receive comments, and assuming there's no significant opposition to our game plan, then I can finalize that document and I will have the environmental compliance complete. Okay, in the latter part then of 22, which then allows me to move forward with awards in early 23. So that's why I made the statement, assuming no considerable public opposition to the plan. Now, I have to rework the plan, then I can be in a position to start making awards in early 23, assuming I've got the lands made available to me.
Okay. And the reason I brought that up, because again, that's another one of those things when everybody mentions study, it's the first thing that goes through everybody's mind is, here we go again, We're talking about a plan that's been around since the 90s, and I understand in the 90s things change and so on, and I respect that.
May I make a comment on the study? Because it's very important to note. Today, we have $255 million to do this project. If we had not done the study in the 90s with Fred, and I remember coming here in the 90s doing that study, we would not have $255 million. So none of us like to do studies. The reason we have money on Comey, we had a study. West Shore, we had a study. East Baton Rouge, we had a study. Those studies were on the shelf after the storm, and that's how we were able to secure those dollars.
Okay, so with these studies being done and everything else, I'll go back to the $255 million.
Yes, sir.
Again, and I'll make reference to the Comey River Diversion Canal and throw it in the last 2-3 weeks, $128 million, $128 million, because we ran out of money yet again to finish it. That's what, we're not in the same boat with this, are we? Or could there possibly be, that's what we run into with this?
So the 125, thank you for bringing that up. The $125 million that was added for Comey is not for cost overruns. It is to increase resiliency of the project. It is what we saw when Hurricane Ida came in and it hit the Hisder system. It was resilient and it stood up. And we want to add resiliency to Comey. That is what the $125 million was for. That is what the administration put that money in there for. It's resiliency features.
Okay, that's good to know. I guess this next one goes to Fred.
Let me just state one comment to that.
Yes, sir.
It is very important to have those components in there, because ultimately, the city of Baton Rouge is going to be responsible for maintenance of it. So anything that we can get added to add the stability and long-term maintenance of it is certainly a plus for us.
Okay. One of the things that we have, I guess this is where the Corps would step in, one of the things that we're doing through East Baton Rouge Parish right now is we have groups in the river, the Comey River itself, that are looking at clearing and snagging. Nothing to do with dredging. I want to state that publicly. Not even touching dredging right now. We want to try and get that completed along in line with the Comey River diversion and hopefully some of the other projects, because we feel like it's a 3-tier approach as far as keeping the rivers channels clean so wood doesn't back up and everything else. What has there, outside of what is going on right now, has the Corps looked at any other projects in the future as far as actual dredging of Comey and Amite River or any locations thereof on 2?
No, the short answer is no, sir. We're not looking at any dredging activities on the Comey or the Amite at this particular time. We did begin a large complex study on the Amite. For the Amite Basin, that would be a companion to Comey, would be a companion to the East Baton Rouge 5-channel project, and that plan is under development right now. It is looking heavily at non-structural measures to raise homes and so forth, and dry flood-proof businesses. But it is not looking at any dredging activities on the Amite or the Comey.
All right. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate y'all's time coming here and answering the best we could. Thank you.
Councilmember Hudson.
I want to thank you guys for coming. This has been a really good conversation. As I've been sitting here listening, the one thing that I've become a little frustrated with is your process, right? The process for the ultimate Corps approval. It seems like that may almost be a self-inflicted, right? So I'm curious, who comes up with the Corps process for approval, and ultimately what can be done to shorten that? I understand and I see the value in something like an environmental impact statement, but 2 years to get that done. I've got residents that are flooding on spring events on a regular basis since 2016, and so I look to the greater issue. So what can we do about the process? Are there any kind of reforms being looked at from the Corps on your permit approval process?
Sure. The administration, and depending on the administrations that's in, they all look to make reformations for project efficiencies. Of course, that's being made nationwide, and some of that's led, obviously, by at the administration level above the Corps of Engineers. In this particular case, if City Parish wanted to go do this type of work, they would have to get a permit. You'd have to get a permit. That is essentially what the environmental impact statement is. It's a permit. You know, you've got to get the permits to go build a project. You want to build a house, you have to get a permit. I want to clean out these channels. I want to put rocks along it, and I want to go into potentially and unfortunately widen into people's property. I've got to go disclose that to folks. I've got to communicate. I've got to have public meetings. And I got to talk about the benefits. I got to make sure I'm not hurting downstream neighbors. These are tough, complex issues. Drainage has been a problem in this area, in South Louisiana, through this country for years, and it will be into the future, and they're tough issues to overcome. So to be in a position where we signed this agreement 2 years ago, and we're going to be breaking ground next month on a plan that really had to be re-engineered from the beginning, when that money was provided to City Parish to do this job, and no notification was given to them, they had not budgeted for that project. And to be sitting in this position, and look, I'd love to be able to receive the money and immediately go to construction, but unfortunately, there are activities that have to be done. I'm not suggesting to you things can't improve. We're always looking for efficiencies, but it comes down to the team sport. Fred can be ready to go, Nick can be ready to go, but if a landowner, and we've got to work with that land, if a utility is there, so there's things that have to be done to make the project work. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer to the overall question. We recognize it is a process, but we've got to move forward, and I think that's what we're doing.
I think that's what I'm looking for. I guess from the Corps' perspective, do you all agree that there is a deficiency in your process in the timeline and that there are ways out there to improve it?
Well, I'm certainly never going to stand in front of someone to say that we have the perfect answer. There's always ways to improve in anything that we do in life. So certainly when you can improve upon something, we want to do that. We're always looking to do that. And again, that's what we're trying to do on the East Baton Rouge project. And that's why we're excited to be here tonight to tell you within a couple months we'll be working on the lower half of this project. But an environmental impact statement is required on the upper half, and that is well underway.
And then to follow up on Councilman Moak's questions about the amite dredging, so similarly, we're going to start a project by Umanshack with clearing and snagging, but again, no dredging. I think a lot of us recognize the deficiencies with Wake Maurepas and you know, sort of its impact on all of our entire region to send water. Have you guys evaluated those channels for dredging? If not, what dollars do we need to go out after for the study to get to a point where we can let a project?
Well, that would lead to that bad word of study, you know, right?
That's the process. Then
but that is the process, and that's how you get in this position to receive the construction fund. So we had a study going on. We still have it going on, the Amite River Basin. It's partnered with LADOTD here. I will tell you, we did not look at that particular area. That was not in the scope. We do know at the local level that is being worked. I know Congressman Graves has been heavily involved in that. That probably would come back to us, obviously, through a permitting process, but we're not looking at it as a core civil works investment project at this particular time.
Well, I'll just encourage you, as the councilman for the area, right? The Amite River, Bayou Manchac, I would hope that you guys would look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on item 149? Any other council members? Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll